Can Sharon hear us? Hi, Sharon.
She's figuring it out. All right, so good evening, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. Whether you are joining us here live on Zoom or whether you are on Facebook, I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to tonight's broadcast. We have got an exciting discussion to be had tonight, and I have got three incredible, extraordinary women on standby to be engaging in this conversation. We want it to be interactive. We want you to get involved in the conversation. We want to hear your views. We want your questions. We want to have an open and honest conversation about something that we don't get to talk about too often. But before we actually do get started tonight, I'm going to ask Charlene if you will just open up for us by offering a word of prayer to get us going.
Panelists, I ask you to be with anybody who is listening and watching, and I ask that you will allow the Holy Spirit to lead and that somebody will be encouraged. We love you. Thank you for loving us. You're amazing. Amen.
Amen. Charlene, I'm going to ask you to speak up for us a little bit because I'm losing you. I don't know about everyone else. I'm not hearing you too well. Okay, so let me set the premise for this conversation. Let me just jump in there. I can only see 3 people. Am I doing something wrong? No, you're not doing anything wrong. Any problems like that will be on our end. So don't worry about that. Hopefully things will rectify themselves and sort themselves out as we go through. So ladies, now let me just set the premise for this conversation. Now, I have been one that's grown up in the church, been in the church for the majority of my life. And, you know, I think it's safe to assume or safe to say that across the various denominations within the Christian faith, it is widely accepted that fornication or premarital sex or sex outside of the confines of marriage is a sin, it's something that is frowned upon, and it's something that the church quite openly and strongly speaks against. And so what happens is, from, let's say, for those of us who went to Seventh-day Adventist church and grew up in teens ministry, you'll hear that message being repeated: no sex before marriage, no sex before marriage, no sex before marriage. They will try to maybe scare us with thoughts of unwanted pregnancies or even disease. And, you know, for some people along the way, that was a very effective method of encouraging and getting both men and women to remain abstinent. But what I want to really unpack today is the other side of things. You see, it's all well and good to speak to someone who is a virgin and, you know, give them that type of level of reasoning, someone who's never had any sort of sexual encounter or sexual experience. But today, we're going to be unpacking the topic, can you stop once you pop? It's a conversation about sex and the single woman, but from a slightly different perspective. What happens when you have been in a long-term relationship or a marriage? What happens when you have had children? What happens when you've been in a situation where sex is not something that is foreign to you, but now the conversation has to be slightly different? How do we deal with the situation where, so for example, I'm going to use myself. And I'm going to pick on Laurel as well as another mum in the conversation. Laurel, we are both mums. We've had our children, and I'm guessing, as it was for me, that it wasn't the Immaculate Conception. Is that correct?
Speak for yourself. Speak for yourself.
Right. So. Now, I often give the analogy, like I've got a cousin who is 10 years younger than me, and we are between the ages of 18 and 35. So officially, we're still youth. Now, when I go to a youth meeting, and let's say I'm with my cousin, and they're talking about sex and relationships, love, sex and relationships, the conversation or the approach that they're going to take with my cousin has to be completely different to someone like me who has had children, who has had sex before. But for some reason, I'm finding that when it comes to people in my category, the conversation is null and void. It's like you haven't got anything for me. What are you going to say to me? You can't really talk to me about pregnancy because I've been there, I've done that, and I've got the t-shirt. You can't necessarily talk to me about the fear of disease, because at the age I'm at now, I know the kind of steps that one should take in order to prevent that, or to engage in safe sex, in inverted commas. So the conversation that we're going to have today is about the realities of life as a single woman, and sex. We're going to talk about it from that kind of angle. And as I said, I've got some incredible women to unpack this with me. So at this point, I'm just going to ask if these ladies can introduce themselves. Sharon is having some technical issues at the moment. Maybe we're going to get her. We may not, but we're going to keep it going anyway. So Charlene, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for the ladies tonight?
Okay, so hi everybody. My name is Charlene. I am a philosophy and ethics teacher. I also teach theology A-level. My degree was in theology, so I am well versed in the Bible and what it says, especially in regards to sex. And yeah, I am a single woman. I have been single now for 2 years. I have had a couple of long-term relationships. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you very much for joining us, Charlene. And Narelle.
Hi everyone. My name is Laurel. I'm a mum of 2. I've been married. I am now divorced. I'm not single. I do have I should say, long-term partner. Yeah, that's it really.
All right, thank you so much, Laurel.
Anything else you need to know?
Not for now. We're going to get to know a bit more as we go on with the conversation. And then we have Sharon, who is having some crazy technical difficulties at the moment. She may or may not be able to make it back on, but Sharon is a mother of 5. Let me make sure that's correct. Yeah, she's a mother of 5. She also has been married. I believe she was married for 14 years. I'm sure she'll correct me if that's wrong. Married for 14 years and is also now divorced. Hey Sharon. Let's see if we're going to have any joy to take over the... Sharon, you good?
Yeah.
So you come at just the right time. Can you please introduce yourself for those of us watching on Facebook or on Zoom?
Okay, I'm Sharon Davis, a divorcee, mother of 5, loving life.
Well, I've got these ladies on today because
I had to download it on my phone because my computer wasn't working properly.
Oh, well, I'm really glad that you were able to make it in the end. What I'm gonna do at this point, I'm understanding that on Facebook the audio seems to be pretty bad for some people. Let's see what's on this. Okay, we'll see what we can do to get that sorted. Ladies, what I'm going to ask is if you're not actually speaking, if you could mute yourselves, maybe that may help somewhat with what's happening on Facebook.
I'm now having some technical difficulty. Music. It's just when I play music, no? This is what happens when you're high tech and have Alexa, and Alexa don't want to behave.
Don't worry. And so for those of you who are actually watching on Facebook, or for those of you who have Facebook accounts, we want more women to be able to get involved in the conversation. So please do head over to League of Extraordinary Women, our Facebook page, and just search League of Extraordinary Women UK. We should pop up. You should see the logo, and just press share on that broadcast so that we can ensure that women all around can be able to tune in and to be able to get something from this evening's conversation. And I'm going to do that right now myself before my battery dies. Let's have a look. All right, I've shared mine. Okay, so I'm going to try my best to keep up with the comments that are coming in from Facebook and the comments that are coming in here on Zoom. But I'm gonna do my best. But my battery is gonna die any minute with my phone. So I've enlisted some help from the wonderful Shay. So she's gonna perhaps drop some comments in here for us from time to time, so we can keep up with the conversation. So ladies, let's just get straight into it. I've got some questions for each of you, and
we go for the how Facebook.
say that again.
You say you wanted everyone to share the broadcast through the website.
Oh no, so we're going live on Facebook. So if you head over to League of Extraordinary Women on Facebook and find the broadcast and just share it, that will allow more people to see it. I've also just shared it from my personal page. So if you can't find League of Extraordinary Women, by all means, you can head over to my personal page and press share. All right, so ladies, I've got some questions for you, and I'm sure questions as we go along are gonna come in. So the first question that I really have for you is, what are some of the damaging ideas and beliefs, or ideas or beliefs that you once held about sex outside of the confines of marriage? What are some of the damaging beliefs that you had? So as I said, it's kind of widely accepted within the Christian faith that sex outside of the confines of marriage is wrong. That's, pretty much the standard line. But I want to know if you had any damaging ideas about sex or sexuality outside of marriage. Anything that you believed or ever held on to that has been damaging, and you may or may not still have those beliefs. I just want to know what your thoughts are.
I think I'll kick off. I think for me, it's this kind of fear of, okay, so once you've been damaged or once you have tasted the forbidden fruit, that you're not going to then find a Christian man, or you're not going to want, or someone in the church is not going to want you because you have been tainted as such. So it's about trying to keep that holier than holy white girl image as such, because you don't want to be known as that girl. So I think for me, that's one of the biggest misconceptions that I have had in trying to keep a squeaky clean image, because if you want to date someone in the church, then, that's what you need to do, kind of thing.
Okay, thank you for that, Charlene. Anyone else? Sharon, we haven't heard from you at all. Tell me, what are some of the beliefs that you may have had that may have been damaging about the ideas or beliefs that you held about sex outside of marriage?
That you I'm gonna say, can I use words? I don't know.
Listen, you can just be real. This is the League of Extraordinary Women. We're all about authenticity.
That you're a loose woman, damaged property. No one's gonna want you. And I've heard other people kind of use those kind of terms on women who have a child who may not be married, or or even the word divorce, because I was like, oh well, you're sort of like the scorned woman, not to be touched, kind of thing. I think those kind of things come to mind straight away.
Okay, and Laurel, how about you?
I don't think I've actually had any that I felt were damaging in any way. I don't know if that's just been my experience, or maybe because when people say those kind of things, I have heard it in passing. But to be honest with you, I never actually placed much emphasis or onus on it, because I thought to myself, well, to be fair, it's always the woman that is spoken about in those terms. But guess what? She's not sleeping by herself. Or she's not having sex by herself. And a lot of the times, the people that are spouting this nonsense are men within the church who are pressuring young women to have sex anyway. So I never ever really held on to those. I felt to myself that once sex outside of marriage, because to be fair, there's a lot of people having sex outside of marriage within church, but the only receipt you have for it is if you have a baby. Otherwise, how would you know?
Mm.
Do you understand what I mean? So unless somebody went and said to everybody, oh, by the way, I'm sexually active, nobody would actually know. But we seem, it's a thing. Once the person's had a baby, then it's a case of, then all of a sudden, it's like shock horror. This person is loose. This person is, now tainted in some way, shape or form. But the people that are saying this are people that are engaging in the same activity, but for want of a better word, they haven't been caught.
Yeah. That's really interesting, Laura, and it brings me on to something else that I really wanted to explore. You raised a very good question. Unless you have been explicitly told, as in like, unless I come and tell you I'm having sex, you're not going to be in a position to know unless you're the person that I'm having sex with. So what I want to know is, why have we come to... All right, let me give you another example. I find that in church, we don't promote being open and honest about our struggles. I find that we have this crazy idea that we have to promote holiness and perfection, even if that is not our reality. Like, I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine some years ago, and we were saying that the very worst thing that you can ever stand up in church and say is, church, I didn't read my Bible this week, or I didn't study my lesson this week. But when we are going through certain challenges, it's as though we're supposed to just pretend that we've got it all together. We keep that stuff brushed under the carpet, and we don't allow anyone in really to know what's really going on with us. What is it? Is it fear of being condemned? Is it fear of, being rejected? I want to know, what is it about our culture, within our church culture, that causes us to hide our shame or hide our sin?
I think we've been conditioned to wear a mask, from being really, really young. You come to church on a Sabbath or whatever day, you wear your best, you do your hair, even down to my household. Like, I had church underwear that you could not wear in the week, You don't wear your church shoes to school. You don't wear, this is what you wear to church. So even from down to what I wear to church, if I can't wear anything that I wear on another day, then I know that as soon as I step through those doors, I have to take on a completely different persona. Down to, paint a smile on my face. I could have had a crap week and inside I'm crying and I'm in pieces. But you step through those church doors, the smile goes on, and it's happy Sabbath. Yeah, everything is great. My life is great. And we are so conditioned that you can't say that your doo-doo smells. Like, it's got to smell of potpourri. Like, everything has to be perfect. And we have created a culture that's not real. We say we're a hospital for sick people, but actually you can't come here if you're sick, because we can't help you. That's too real. We say, come as you are, but don't stay as you are, kind of thing. And I think it's a condition that we're trained from young to just pretend that everything is great. You can't say, actually, this is something that I struggle with. And I think that's where the problem lies.
I think another big problem within church is that we seem to have this hierarchy of sins.
Yes.
So certain sins are looked at as worse than others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's why sex is more or less like a taboo subject in church, because if you're having sex and then you so happen to get pregnant outside of marriage, then you're seen as you've committed the worst sin ever. But, the sin of of talking about your brother or sister, the fact that in church there are family members that come to church every week and don't even speak to each other, those are all sins, So, people take communion and then they have aught with their brother or their sister. But because we have this mentality that certain sins, that's why sex within itself or sex outside of marriage is always looked at as the worst thing you could ever do. That's why, for me, I've always struggled with why we read people out of church or disfellowship them because they've had a baby, outside of wedlock, because the other person who's committing the same sin but hasn't had the baby, you know, they're still coming in every week. So it's because that one's so visible that we seem to, I don't know, hone in on that one.
Yeah.
And that's what causes a lot of problems for our young people, because they then feel that they can't speak openly to anybody about it. So if they are struggling with sex outside of marriage, they're not going to come and speak to anybody about it, because they know that automatically they're going to be judged. Whereas if they come and say to the person, oh, do you know what? I'm a kleptomaniac, I steal. They're not going to run to the church board and tell them, well, that this person needs to be read out of church. The next business meeting, we need to have this brother or sister up. And I think until we get to the place where we realize that in God's eyes, sin is sin, we will always have this problem.
Thank you. And you know what, Naomi, I don't think things have changed much from the Bible. Like the woman who was caught in the act of adultery, because they treated her. And I think it's the same today. I mean, we don't go stoning them, but we stone with our mouths.
Emotionally.
That lady, and how we ostracize her from the community. And that's still happening today. And it's so funny, Noelle, what you said is so true. The woman who may have, she could have even been raped, but she had sex, yeah? And she was pregnant. And that showed. But the woman who had sex, had an abortion, and maybe did something else, no reprimands. So, and if you're looking at sin, which one's the worst? You know, at least she hasn't killed as well. You know, so I don't know.
And I think that's the main issue, isn't it? It's when it's visible. We're okay with sin within the church as long as people don't know. You know, guys are okay with sleeping with girls in the church as long as you don't then say, okay, well, I slept with him and him and him and him and I did this. As long as it's kept hush-hush, then it's okay. We then have the issue when we want to have a discussion like this, or you then have an issue when the girl gets pregnant, you know, and it is visible and you get caught as such, you know, but if it is a sin, it's a sin, regardless of whether or not you get caught or not.
Well, ladies, let me ask you this, because we've spoken somewhat about the damaging ideas that we've had. I want to know, have you developed any healthy ideas or a healthy approach or a healthy attitude towards your view towards sex outside of marriage? Now, I'm not here asking if this is something that you're promoting. I'm saying we've all been able to identify. So, for example, Sharon, you mentioned, and Charlene as well, you mentioned that some of the ideas that you had were that you would be looked down upon if you were seen to be that girl. But I want to know, do you have, or have you developed any healthy ideas? And I guess, Laurel, the same question would be to you as well. Even though you didn't have or hold on to any negative ideas yourself, what are some of the healthy ideas that you have? The ideas or the beliefs that have helped you on your journey?
One of the things I think I've actually embraced, and I've had to build up my self-esteem, is to know that God made me a sexual, beautiful woman. And
can you say that one more time again, please, Sharon?
God made me, or us, a sexual, beautiful woman. And everything about me, my breath, my form, my feelings was from him. And it's something that he wants me to share with someone else, a male who I'm attracted to, which he gives me those feelings. And so when I look at that, I realize that sex is a gift from God. And so that makes me feel nice to know that he wants us to experience this passion. He just has a confines around it, and because he wants to protect us.
I think that's quite important to actually recognize that sex in itself is not a bad thing. And I think when you take those negative ideas, and then when you are married and you can have sex legally, then how do you break away from that negative idea of what you've had about sex? And if you have had sex and you have those guilty feelings, how do you then have sex guilt-free? And I think it's important to own the fact that, yes, you do have sexual urges, and yes, you do have sexual desires. It's natural. And in a world where sex is absolutely everywhere, you know, in things that we watch, in music that we listen to, in adverts that we see on billboards, etc., sex is everywhere, and you can't hide from it. You can't live in a bubble and shelter yourself from it, but you have to be honest with yourself and understand that, yes, I am going to have sexual desires and urges, but actually what am I going to do about this? Am I going to then go and have sex with everybody, or do I realize that God has put a parameter in place, not just to protect my body physically, but to protect my heart? You know, there is a reason why he has said that you shouldn't have sex outside of marriage, because it can be damaging. I think once you own that and you understand what God wants for you, and have a relationship with God to understand that, I think it makes it just a little bit easier to kind of walk that path of abstinence, if that's what you want. And I think that's the main thing. Be real with yourself, you know, don't try and live this life of abstinence if actually that's not what your heart desires.
We're going to come on to that a little bit more, Charlene, because we're going to dig deeper into that. But I just want to come to Laurel quickly, because I think you were about to say something before we go anywhere else.
I just wanted to agree with what Charlene and Sharon said, that, you know, once we start to understand that sex was actually something that was created by God, then it shifts your mindset. And instead of frightening our young people about having sex outside of marriage, we need to actually speak to them and explain to them that sex is something that was created by God. We have these urges because he's made us as sexual beings. And it's about exploring the different avenues around that to help our young people to understand and make better choices for themselves, and not feel like they are somehow strange or abnormal because they have these urges and these desires and these feelings. So for me, I think as I got older, and I probably even after I got married, I came to the understanding and realization that, you know what, at the end of the day, this was something that's created by God. Because even something as simple as, you know, the way we are so conditioned that sometimes you think to yourself, even when you're married, well, okay, I speak for myself. Maybe I was very naive at the time. I used to think to myself, can I even have sex on Sabbath? You know, when I was married, I thought to myself, that's such a strange thing. But because it's seen as something that is not spiritual or not of God, it can sometimes, you know, make you think about it in very strange ways. So that for me was something that I had to, you know, I don't know, come to the realization for myself that it was something that was given to me as a gift by God.
Ladies, I want to jump straight into the meat of the conversation. And I want to ask the question, and I'm sure it's the question that everyone's been waiting to have answered. And the question is, from your perspective and in your opinion, can you stop once you pop?
I think it's a mindset. The reason I said that,
I think you can. I think it all depends on where you are in your life. So let me use myself as an example. So I've been married.
Sorry, Laurel, can you speak up a little bit more for me, please? Just a little bit more, please.
All right, let me see if I can turn up my microphone a bit. Can you hear me a bit better now?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah? No? Okay. Sorry, I'm saying, let me use myself as an example. I've been married, I'm divorced, and outside of, you know, after my divorce, I wasn't in a relationship with anybody. So it was a case of like, I wasn't actively seeking somebody to go and have sex with. So when I hear that question of once you pop, can you stop? It makes me think to myself that you've now got this desire and this urge that you have to go and get it from somewhere, you know. But for me, I think it all depends on where you are in your life and in your own personal journey. Some people, we have sex addicts. I'm not one, but I don't know what their struggles may be. But I think if you are somebody who has been sexually active, as in within a marriage or whatever, wherever it was, with a partner, long-term partner, whatever, it's definitely something that I think depends on your journey and your mindset, where you are in your life.
Anyone else, ladies? What's your opinions? Can you stop once you pop?
If you, I do think it's a mindset, as I was saying before. If you're by yourself and you're happy, and you're not attracted to someone, even though you may have been before, and you may have lost your partner, and you're not interested in being with someone else, yes, it can be. It's happened, and people have done it. If you are in a relationship and you've had sex before, it's then harder. And if you're attracted sexually to someone or physically to someone, then it's definitely harder, because the way God's made us is that the attraction, it brings urges. So then it is definitely harder to refrain from having sex. Even if sometimes people can be married and they're not attracted to their partner, then they don't want sex. I think it's a body chemistry. So yeah. Can you stop? I know people who have been with someone and haven't had sex at all, but I would say it can bring challenges.
Okay, Charlene, what about you? What's your perspective on this?
I think that, again, I agree with the ladies. It is a mindset. I think stopping, you have to make a decision for yourself why it is that you want to stop. Are you stopping because that's what the church tells you to do? Or are you stopping because you now realize, actually, God has a purpose and a plan for my life, and there is a reason as to why he designed sex within a marriage. So once you've kind of worked that out, I think it doesn't necessarily make it easier. I think it gives you a little bit more strength to hold on to that idea that, okay, this is something that I know I shouldn't be doing, although, yeah, it might have been good, and yeah, it might have been nice and it felt good. However, I know that I want something better for my life. God has something better for me. And actually, if I want God to bless my next relationship or bless me in my marriage, there are certain things that I need to do to protect myself. You know, I did some reading into this whole idea of soul ties, and this idea of every time that you have sex with somebody that you're giving away a little bit of yourself. And I think for me, I've come to this realization that, do I want that 6 seconds of pleasure, as in the moment, that feeling that you get, you know, do I want 6 seconds, or do I want a relationship in eternity with God, guilt-free? You know, 6 seconds, eternity, guilt-free, you know, kind of makes it a little...
Well, Charlene, let me come back to you on that. Mm-hmm. What if there is no real guilt? What if those 6 seconds are so mind-blowing that guilt has gone out of the head for a little bit? What if there is no guilt?
Okay, well then, and I'm not promoting having sex outside of marriage, but if that guilt isn't there, then you're not convicted to not have sex. So it makes it harder. Like, if you're not convicted in something, then
why are you doing it?
Then do you know what? Have sex then, because you're not convicted not to. You know, and the reason why God has given us free will is for us to make decisions for ourselves. When we're doing something and we're being forced to, it's kind of meaningless, you know? I know there are certain things that I should do. I should exercise, I should eat healthy if I want to lose weight. So I'll make a decision. Do I want to do those things to the end result? And if I don't, then I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to put myself in that situation. You know, and I think if the guilt isn't there, then you're not there yet. So don't try and force something, because actually then you start to resent God, and you start to kind of be like, oh, well, you know, I've done this for you, and I've given up this, and I've given up that, and what have you done for me? But God isn't a Santa Claus God. You know, he doesn't write a list of all the good things that you've done and reward you because, you know, he doesn't check a list and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that if that guilt isn't there, your conviction isn't there. And I think that just kind of shows you really that maybe it's not your time to live abstinently.
Well, ladies, I want to just jump real quick to the to Facebook, because we've got a lot of activity going on there. I've been trying to charge my phone and do this at the same time, but I just want to catch up on some of the questions that have come in. Sorry for the ladies and that I've missed earlier on. I'm going to just ask the questions that are kind of pertinent to what we're discussing right now, rather than going back. So we've got a question from Facebook. What do you think about single women who try to avoid having sex with a man by using alternative toys, in inverted commas, to ease the urge? Is that a sin, or is it still classed as having sex? So we got someone who's asking for single women, especially those who do have really strong sexual urges or sexual desires or this pent-up frustration, and I guess now we're moving on to some of the practical ways that you can live an abstinent life, especially if you come from a place where you have had an active sex life. I guess the question is masturbation a sin? Is using some sort of toy, some sort of device to kind of give you that orgasm, to relieve you of that pent-up frustration, is that a sin? Is that wrong? Is that a practical method that we as women should be or could be? Is it permissible for us to be using these options as a way to relieve ourselves?
I remember when I separated from my husband and I was getting divorced, I had a lot of older women in the church telling me, you know, that I should get one of these devices. And I, you know, I used to do Ann Summers, so I knew about the devices and all those things. I chose not to, and the reason why I chose not to, because I've read up on a lot of things, and I'm very aware that when if you start down that road of masturbation, and then it's very likely that it might be harder. I don't know. This is what I think for a man, if I do, you know, want to be with someone else again, to pleasure me in the way that I need to. So I didn't want to sort of put in place something else that I became accustomed to, and so I chose not to. But I know that it was viable to just buy something, because is it a sin? I don't know. I don't know. It's not with another person. I just think it can cause, for your sexual being, I think it can cause unsatisfaction with a real human, another partner, when you're ready to, if you're ready to, you know, be married or have another sexual relationship, because it's going to be harder, because you're used to pleasuring yourself. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So that's,
yeah, no, we do hear you. Yeah. Laurel, give me your thoughts on that.
Like Sharon said, I don't know if it's a sin per se. I don't think I'm qualified to say that it's a sinful thing to do. However, why I would steer clear of it is because it can cause you to have unrealistic expectations. So because you are now relying on this device to give you sexual pleasure, when you then end up in a relationship, you sort of like have a comparison. You then are comparing what you can do by yourself to what your husband is doing for you. And it can cause a lot of problems within a relationship, because then you start to feel unfulfilled, not satisfied, and then because you're not getting the satisfaction from your husband, you then decide to go and pleasure yourself somewhere else with this device. Now, the thing is, because sex is made as an act by God between the husband and wife, it's for you to learn from each other. So I've always had this discussion with people that, you know, you can't miss something you've never had. Some people disagree with me, some people agree. So because if you, in an ideal world, I guess, or ideal Christian world, if you got married as a virgin, you wouldn't have anything to compare your husband to. You wouldn't be able to say, well, he's not as good as Billy or whoever, because you've never experienced it. And I think it's the same thing with using a device. If you're using it and you're creating and you're able to pleasure yourself, then you'll have no need. That part of your relationship with your husband would then have some kind of negative effect on the rest of your relationship. But whether or not to turn around and outright say it's a sin, I don't think I'm qualified to say that.
Charlene, what about you?
I think that's a tricky one. I think me personally, I don't want to put the key in the ignition and not go nowhere. So I personally wouldn't. In terms of whether or not it's a sin, I'm going to be really cliched and say actually that's between you and God to decide actually where do you work that out. So I do think that's a tricky one. And I also think actually it's a personal thing. You know, if you feel within yourself that you're doing something wrong, then you've kind of answered the question. So yeah, I don't know. I think that one is tricky. I think, you know, we don't come from the Catholic Church point saying masturbation outright no, because of the whole sacred sperm thing. So I do think it does make it a little bit hard to kind of give a black and white answer to that. I feel like I'm not really a wishy-washy that one away, but yeah, I think that one's hard.
Well, this question is not just to the panel that we have here. It's also to you watching on Facebook. It's also to you who are here on Zoom. So I've just had a response come in. It says, but you might be feeling good, yet it's still sin. So I think that is in relation to when you said, Charlene, you know, if it doesn't, you know, does it feel as though, you know, you're doing something wrong? Are you feeling maybe guilty about it? I think perhaps that's what she's referring to.
So just in response, there's a difference between as in it feels good at the time, as in being sexually pleased and aroused, that feeling of good. But when I say does it feel good, as in does it sit right with your heart afterwards? You know, if you feel that actually maybe this is something that I shouldn't be doing, I think you should allow the Holy Spirit to lead and guide you on that one, to say, actually, is this something wrong? And also, I think it's about your intentions as well. I think that is a lot in terms of when we do things. What is your intention of using a vibrator or whatever it is that you're using? Are you doing it to curb your sexual desires? Are you doing it because you know that it's wrong for me to go out and find a man, so I'm going to use something else? I think all of those things kind of come into play when making a decision, actually, is this wrong or is this right?
We have another comment on Zoom saying, I personally think it's sin. Sexual activity outside of the confines of marriage are sin regardless.
But how do you define then a sexual activity? Because I could be aroused by you hugging me.
Exactly.
You know, I could, you know, be sexually aroused. You may brush past me, Nay, and touch my leg, and I might get a little bit horny. Like, does that mean no, don't touch me, that you sinner? Like, how can you? I don't think it's so clear cut to define activity like that, because what turns me on might not turn you on.
And she's come back to say, I mean, in regards of masturbation.
Okay.
And I think that's fair enough. I don't, you know, oftentimes we can be quick to say, you know, well, what does the Bible say? What does the Bible say? And sometimes the Bible is silent on, you know, for example, the Bible doesn't say, say that again, Sharon?
I just want to say something, because I've got children, and if you realise with children when they're growing up, they will start exploring their bodies and they will find that pleasure spot and they'll be like, and you see, whoa. And I don't believe that child's sinning.
No, absolutely.
I think it's when you know. It's when you know and you are doing something. It's almost like you're faking it to make it.
Mhm.
No, if you really are sexually have a sexual desire, then you need to find a husband or find a wife, really.
I don't know if it's that easy though, in terms of like.
No, but I was going to say the same thing. That oftentimes I hear that thrown around a lot, like, you know, and they always reference that it's better to marry than to burn. You know, I said on another broadcast that someone said, I was at camp meeting one time, and I had my 2 kids with me, and this woman came up to me and she's like, Naomi, are you married? And first of all, I'm just thinking, first of all, what does that have to do with you? But anyway, then she's like, Naomi, get married. And I just thought, that is such a stupid thing to even say. I mean, it's so ridiculous.
That is a very old school mentality, and I think that's very detrimental, which is why there are so many people in the church who have stayed married because they don't want to get divorced and are living in a loveless, unhappy marriage because of that whole, you know, Paul said, you know, if you can't curb your sexual desires, get married, and he chose to remain celibate, and all balls to you. I'm sure you lived a very happy celibate life, but actually in reality, number one, it's not that easy to remain celibate, and number two, it's not that easy when you have burning desires to find a husband. Like
something, in fact, I was going to make just one, Laurel, I'll come to you in a minute. Let me just read some of the comments, because I don't want us to move on to something else and leave some of the women behind. All right, so another comment's come in. Sometimes you don't even seek it that day. Sometimes you don't even seek it. That day on your time of the month, you bump into a hot guy and he gives you the shakes. You start shaking. Yeah. You know, as women, we know biologically, certain times of the month, we're going to have increased sexual desires. Let me read out a couple comments. Sex, in my opinion, this is from Facebook. Sex, in my opinion, is a spiritual connection that I don't think should be shared. Don't get me wrong. You can have sex just to have sex, but take away that spiritual connection, then it's just an act which can be turned on and off. Then we're talking about masturbation. It might be a sin as it's not naturally done. Another comment. The issue is about cost. We can have and do everything, but everything has a cost. Right. You don't have to feel guilty to not have sex. You just have to understand the cost to reputation, to fulfillment, financial cost, etc. Once you have an accurate estimation of the costs, you will make the right choice if you're rational. Someone else goes on to say, we're being way too simplistic about this. It's not binary like that. So for those of you who are on Facebook, please keep the comments, the questions coming. We're going to do our best to kind of to move between the two platforms.
Whoever said that it's not so simplistic, can you elaborate on that comment? What do you mean when you're saying that it's not that simplistic? I'm a little bit confused.
All right, well, we'll wait for them to respond. Laurel, sorry, I interrupted you.
That's okay, no problem. I was just going to say, you know, most people have heard that text when they've been growing up in church. You know, it's better to marry than to burn. But what happens is it's putting pressure on young people in a way that is unrealistic, because women in the church outnumber men. I don't even know, is it 5 to 1? I don't even know what the ratio is now. Yeah,
I think it's 7 to 1.
Telling young people, right? So we're telling young people this, and then what's happening is, number one, they're either getting married to somebody who is not suitable to them. Yeah. So, you know, they're entering into unhealthy relationships, and that doesn't necessarily mean physical violence. It could also be mental, it can be emotional, sexual, whatever, spiritual even. Then you've also got, on the flip side, people that are staying in relationships because they don't want to be by themselves, or they, you know,
dangerous
in a less abusive relationship because that's better. No way, it is not, you know. And so we're having these problems, and young people are then being stuck because there's some of them that don't even realize that, guess what, you may not even get married.
Yeah,
and that's a reality for people. And, you know, they end up then feeling that there's something that's wrong with them. Yeah. But it's just how life is. Even if you look outside of church, not everybody outside in the world, I should say, get married. It's just not going to happen for everyone. So we definitely need to look at it from a different perspective with regards to better to marry than to burn. Because what is your reasons for getting married then? Is it just because you want to curb your sexual desires? Because that definitely isn't a reason to get married.
Ladies, I want to ask you another question, and I want to move on to the question of, I think we've talked about what is maybe obvious as to what some of the challenges are. But let's move to now, you know, if you're in a long-term relationship, like Sharon pointed out, if you're in a long-term relationship, you're obviously attracted to one another. You may well be moving towards marriage. But there are obviously challenges in that setting to remain abstinent. But what I want to ask right now is for maybe some tips and some advice, and nothing anecdotal, please, ladies. I want something practical for the people that are watching right now to be able to take away. What are some of the practical steps that one can take to help manage this abstinence thing? And again, specifically, I'm not talking about from the perspective of someone who has never had a sexual experience. I'm specifically talking about from the perspective of someone who has engaged in an active sex life. Maybe they had great sex. Maybe they love sex. Maybe they may be even addicted to sex. You know, Laurel touched on that a little bit earlier. But for someone who is saying, you know what, God, this is my struggle. This sex thing, I'm really struggling to beat it. God, take this away from me. I want to be able to live according to your word. But for some reason, that has not quite happened yet. What are some of the practical steps that we can take within ourselves to manage our sexuality, to manage our sexual urges and our sexual frustrations? What can we do on a practical level? This question, let me just say, is not just to the panelists. It's to those of you who are watching on Zoom. It's to those of you who have joined us on Facebook. Let's have a really frank and honest conversation and really help one another with this, because this is a real struggle for many of us as women who have experienced sex and are now striving to lead abstinent lives. Let us know your tips, your ideas as to what we can do to deal with the frustrations, to manage our desires, and to live in accordance with what God actually wants for us. Any ideas, ladies?
I think, isn't it Ellen G. White who kind of gives some ideas in terms of when she says that you should do group dating?
Speak up again for me. I can't hear you too well.
I said, I think that it's Ellen G. White that talks about this idea of group dating. And I think when you're younger, I think group dating works quite well. But I am 31, and if I'm being really honest, I don't want to go out with my boyfriend and your friends and my friends. Like, I want to spend some quality time. And when I was in a long-term relationship, that was something that I really tried to do. I tried to make sure there was always people around, because it's hard. I was hell of attracted to this guy. He was fine. And I was a little bit nervous to be on my own with him, because, you know, I don't know what would happen. So the early days, I really kept people around, because I was like, you know what? I want to do this properly. Like, you know, I'm going to put barriers in place, and I'm not going to let myself have those feelings. But the reality of that was, there came a point where he said to me, do you know what, Charlene? I just want to spend some time with you. And I was like, oh, I know, I hear you. I want to spend time with you too, but you know. And I continued to have people around, which made it harder for us to get to know each other. Made it harder for me to really know who he was, and vice versa, because when we're with our friends and when he's with his friends, we put on a show. You know, you act up to the audience. And I think for me, one of the most practical things was having an accountability partner. But having an accountability partner, it has to be someone that you can be honest and open with. That if you do slip, that you can say, do you know what? So last night, boy, this went down. But get back on the horse. Like, do you know what? Stuff happens. You may slip up, but have someone that you can be honest with, that can check up on you and to be like, so why did I see his car there at 7 o'clock this morning, kind of thing. I think that is important, to have these conversations and to have
a group of people around you that care for you, that want the best for you, and understand the struggles, that can be your cheerleader and can support you when you are struggling with those desires and urges.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for that, Charlene. Sharon, what are you going to say? What do you think? What are some of the practical steps that women can take to really manage this thing?
I've got a range. So I'm going to start with, if you are going on a date, not a group date, by yourself. I think the first thing that you could actually do, that I think that's quite helpful, is to have an honest talk with him or her, and just say, I want to do this. Like, I want to be abstinent. I want to be. I really like you, but I also want to honor God. So I think we need to be really open and talk about it. How do you feel? Do you think we can do this? It's not about you only. It's about the other person. Like, if they think that, you know what, now, because I just want to get in your pants, then you might as well just go with it. Because, or are we going to try? I think, to be honest with them, I think the other thing that I find that's quite helpful is, I've heard other things like, if you're going on a date and you are feeling horny, because there's sometimes when you're going out, you're already feeling horny before. Don't wear your sexy knickers, because you know what I mean.
Wear the granny panties. Don't help. Wear granny panties. Make no difference. Don't wear the matching bra. Don't shave.
You know what? This is not okay. If you're on your women meet and you want to go out, because I'm not going to have sex with.
Yeah, believe it. Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
Something. Yeah.
The other thing I find as well that is very helpful, when you actually spend some time with God and you're close with God, it actually, yourself becomes lowered and you actually want to do what He wants to do. But it's not all the time you're on a spiritual high.
Yeah.
But when you're on a spiritual high, it's like when you say no, it's no. Mm-hmm. So that helps as well.
Thank you for that, Sharon. Laurel, what are your thoughts?
You know what, Sharon? That really made me laugh, because I remember, when I first got divorced, that's the kind of stuff I did to kind of police myself. I thought to myself, do you know what? How am I going to actually conquer this? Because it's actually real. And, you miss, the intimate part of a relationship, someone hugging you, someone kissing you. And if you're one of those kind of people that the person kissing you in a certain part, like the back of your neck or somewhere, that those are the places that cause you to have, those kind of urges, you kind of like steer clear of that. Mm-hmm. But for everybody, different things will work, like Charlene said, some people will be able to date in groups, When you get to a certain age, it makes it a lot more difficult to be dating in a group, especially if you've come out of a marriage or whatever. So practical steps, if anybody knows what they all are, I'm willing to hear what they are as well, because trust me, I still need to learn some myself.
But I think as well that we need to...
What I would say though is that things like I know for me, I'm a person that I get a bikini wax all the time. Yeah, every 6 weeks, that's my thing. But when I was no longer married, I left it to grow. So it was a case of I knew that I wasn't going to be going out on any dates with anybody and getting intimate, because guess what? No way. So for me, that was my way of policing myself. Or I used to, even not wearing matching underwear, just making sure that when you have dates earlier on in the day, rather as opposed to later in the evening. So, and you have a cutoff time, say, okay, well, we need to leave by this time. And as Sharon said, because you're in a relationship, hopefully with somebody who's on the same page as you and wants the same thing as you, you have a discussion. You have, you discuss the ground rules from the beginning and say, look, we're both on the path I don't want to, I don't want to have sex before marriage. Hopefully the person is not going to be someone that's going to be pressurizing you. Yeah. But with the men in church right about now, I can't swear blind that won't be the case. But you have that discussion, honest and frank discussion about what you want, where you want the relationship to go, what you will allow to happen and what you won't allow to happen. And as I can't remember who it was that said it, there will be times when you may slip up. Do not beat yourself up about it, because we are human. We live in a sinful world. But don't use that as your get out of jail card every time you do slip up. Oh, I'm sinful. Oh, I'm only human. It has to be something that you keep striving for. It's not going to be something that once it's going to be mastered in one day and that's it. It's never going to happen again. It's going to be a constant daily struggle. And it's sort of like, I don't know, maybe rehab or Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is blah, blah, and I've been abstinent for 6 days. You have to really look at it practically rather than setting yourself unrealistic, having unrealistic expectations. I've been using that word a lot this evening with regards to what you want for yourself and where you see your relationships going.
Ladies, let me just jump in here. Hold on a second. I just want to jump to some of the comments because they're coming in thick and fast. And I'm going to respond. I'm going to respond to this. I've got some comments from the men at the moment who are saying, for your information, men don't care about your matching bra and panties.
Exactly, they don't.
A man will move to you. Guys, listen. He says, a man will move to you if your breasts are being held up by faith and you're wearing granny knickers. You need another solution. Someone else. This is exactly what I want to say to these guys who are getting involved. Someone else says, wax or no wax is not a prevention. Men, let us tell you something. We're talking about for us. Maybe this is not about what you desire. This is about us. So let me just go. Let me break that down a little bit further. So, for example,
Naomi, can I just cut you 1 minute? Because I put up the waxing one. Yeah, it's not a case of whether or not I think to myself, is he going to like it, hairy or not? It's not that. For me, myself, I don't want to offer it that way. So it's not about giving him a choice. He doesn't even come into the equation. No. It's my way of policing myself and saying, well, you know what? Especially if you're in a relationship with somebody, as a woman, if you're in a relationship with somebody and it's the first time you're going to actually, engage in sex, you want to make sure you are presenting yourself at your best, at your tip top. So for some women, it's different things. But I know for me personally, that was my way of policing myself. Not about whether or not he liked it or not. He didn't even come into the equation.
Let me read out a couple more comments. We've got someone else who's written, I think if you're in a relationship, you can't, sorry ladies and guys, I'm sick right now, so bear with me. I think if you're in a relationship, you can't have naked sleepovers and expect to just not do it. I think you have to be realistic in how real the urges are and not put yourself in a situation where you're not giving yourself a chance. Also, you both have to be in agreement on your abstinence, because if it's just you wanting it, then you're fighting a losing battle.
Absolutely. I think that right there is really important.
Exactly.
You have made the decision that you don't want to have sex, but your boyfriend or your girlfriend is not in that frame of mind. You know what? You need to walk away, because this whole thing of being unequally yoked is real. And for me, with this whole idea of not being equally yoked isn't necessarily a believer, non-believer thing. If this is where I'm at in my spiritual journey, and actually I don't want to have sex, and you still want to, it can't work. Like, you could be,
we don't agree. You don't agree.
Absolutely. And we're never going to meet. And I think that right there is important. You've got to find actually what works for you. You know, I've heard people say, oh, well, you shouldn't be on the phone past 10 o'clock at night because that's when the conversation turns. Listen, I can be horny at any time of the day. I can call you at lunchtime. and the conversation can switch. You can be talking to me about peanut butter, and I'm gonna make that into some sexy conversation. You know, I think that you have to understand, actually, this is my cut-off point. This is where things become a little bit harder for me, and I'm going to, you know, I'm going to then put a barrier on that barrier, because I think skirting so close to the edge makes it hard. And be realistic with the, you know, with these things. You know, I've heard so many misconceptions. Oh, you know, don't go to the cinema because it's dark. Listen, again, I can feel horny in daylight, in the sunshine. Like, I think that you have to understand what switches your button, where your point is.
Exactly. And
ladies, hold on. Let me just jump back to some of the comments. We ran an Instagram poll. So if you're not following us on Instagram, head over to @ExtraordinaryWomenUK and get involved in our conversations that we have on there. We ran an Instagram poll about some of the practical ways that we as women can manage our sexuality, our sexual urges. And one of the solutions, or one of the suggestions that came up was to go and work out. To get into the gym, or jump on that treadmill, or burning off some of that energy. I know for me personally, that has definitely been in the past something that has worked. You can be feeling a certain kind of way, and you've got this thing just building up and burning up inside of you. You don't know where to turn, you don't know what to do, but getting on that treadmill and burning that thing off can really work wonders. Straight up, horniness happens anytime, anywhere.
But I also think that you've got to be intentional about things that you're feeding your soul, you know.
Absolutely, that's exactly where we were going.
Yeah, I personally had to stop watching Empire, because that was porn to me. I'd watch Empire and be feeling all kind of ways in my sleep and having all kinds of dreams about all kind of peoples. So if you are, and we are visual creatures, I think if you know that these are things that turn you on or cause you to have unholy thoughts, then, you know, what's the scripture? If your right arm causes you to sin, cut it off. And I think that is important. That is important. What are you listening to? What are you reading? Dash out those 50 Shades of Grey books, you know, throw away the Eric Jerome Dickey books. Like, you know, what you feed your soul it definitely plays a part, definitely.
Someone said, if Empire does it for you, please don't watch Power.
Listen, I watch Power like you. I watch it like this. With my Bible open.
You know, the other thing that I find that can be very helpful, apart from the exercise, which I was going to say, if you sort of, because, okay, the emotions and all the adrenaline that comes out from wanting to have sex is almost like addiction. It's almost like trying to detox and give up eating or something.
Withdrawal symptoms.
When you put that energy into like a project, a business, and you're giving it your all, and you tire out yourself emotionally and physically in something that's gonna lift you up in either, I don't know, your finances or your life, studying, and you throw everything you have into that, it sort of like gives an edge that you're really tired and you don't have time to sort of like get straight. That also helps, you know, doing something development-wise for yourself. Really good way of actually helping not just you, but your partner as well. And encouraging each other on your journey. So you say, you know, you go for that and I'm doing that. And you're sort of, you're so tired, you're just on the phone and you're like, yeah, how was today? Because you're sort of feeding into each other's projects instead of normally feeding into each other's fun or whatever. It really does help.
Ladies, we're gonna wrap up in a minute. Here's the thing. I know that we are just scratching the surface. I know that all of you have so many more powerful insights to share. We simply cannot do this all online. And ladies, please know and believe you need to be looking out. Follow us on Facebook if you're not doing so already. We have some incredible events lined up, but we're going to be really peeling back and digging into these type of topics even further, but in a setting that's more conducive to what it is that we're trying to achieve. So look out for the things that are going to be coming in the future. Ladies, I want to ask a question, and it's really, because here's the thing. my understanding is that we're, as Laurel said, we're at different times in our life. We're at different points in our journey. Some of us may be completely single. Some of us may be in long-term relationships. Some of us may be just getting out of relationships. Some of us may have just come out of a marriage. We're at different stages on our journey. And, you know, some of us may never even have experienced a committed relationship at all. But regardless of where we're at, these urges and these desires, and this, you know, it's going to affect us in different ways. So what I really want to know is, and this is kind of to wrap up, is what is the one thing that you would want the women on here today to be able to take away if they were to forget every single thing else that has been discussed, any tips, if they were to forget everything, if there was one thing that you wanted the women who are struggling with this whole sex thing to take away, what would that one thing be? What would you say to the woman who may or may not even feel right now convicted that, you know, sex outside of marriage is not God's ideal? Maybe she's not quite there yet. What do you have to say to whether she's having sex, not literally right now, but whether she's having sex now or not? What would you say to that woman? I just want to try to bring some encouragement, some practical help, something that the women can really hold on to as they continue their journey.
I think I would say that God made us a spiritual being, and He wants us to embrace ourselves, our bodies, and how He created us, and love ourselves. I think that starts with actually getting to know yourself. And there's a really good book I called The Wait by Devon Franklin, and it talks about him waiting with his wife, waiting for sex, but also encouraging her to be the woman that God created her to be. And when you understand that He wants you to be your best self and to give your partner your best self, I think that book's got a lot of really good topics and really good suggestions about knowing who you are, that God created your urges, and He made you just perfect. When He made human beings, He said, you know, this is good. You are good. With all those urges, with all your beautiful body, with everything that He made you, and the thoughts that you think, you know, God made you and you are good. So don't let just because you think something or you have feelings that you are bad or, oh, God doesn't love you. That's a lie. But find something like The Wait. You've got devotionals as well that are really, really encouraging. So you can build up on your self-esteem and who you made you to be.
Thank you for that, Sharon. Laurel?
One thing I would say to take away from this is to understand that it's a process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. If you are having these urges, it's an opportunity for you to maybe get to know yourself, work on your relationship with God, and actually have a one-to-one conversation with Him about it. Many times, but He made us. He even knows everything that's going on in our lives without us, without us actually saying to Him, "Oh God, this is what I'm struggling with." So it's definitely something I think you are having these issues and urges. But Lord, I'm really struggling with this. I don't know how to overcome it, and I need you to either, direct me as to what I should do, or maybe put me in touch with somebody who can help me to understand, the plan you have for my life, and to understand that God made us as sexual beings. So even though you are having these feelings and these urges, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not abnormal in any way. It's not a sin to actually have those feelings. It's more of a sin if you actually act on them in a way that is not pleasing to God. So for me, I think that's what I would say to anybody, to have a conversation with God and try to find a way that you can communicate with Him so you can understand what His plan is for your life.
Thank you, Laurel. Before I go to you, Charlene, just want to read out another comment that's come through. And again, that's for people to be able to take away. You're not a bad person for having urges, but you can help yourself to control it. It's one of those things that you cannot do without God. So go to him with it without shame. There is nothing you cannot say to God. Lord, I'm struggling with my lust. Honestly, God wants to hear it all. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Charlene, we're going to come to you.
I think the thing that I would like everybody, ladies, male, female, beast, man, animal, to take away is this idea that there is no hierarchy of sin, you know. And I think we need to really get rid of this shame thing that is connected with sex, because I believe that it's detrimental for younger generations. It's detrimental for if you ever do get married, if you don't. So to understand that there is no hierarchy. God loves you, just you, in your sin, with your sin, in your stink, you know, and he just wants to be there in the midst of it all, you know. And actually, I think when I became a hot girl for God, in terms of when I became honest, open, and transparent with God, I think that's when this guilt, this burden of guilt that I was carrying around for so long suddenly became lifted, you know. So be hot, you know, be honest, open, and transparent, you know. That's what I would like people to take away.
Thank you, Charlene. You know, I've got some really strong views and opinions on this. It's definitely something that has impacted and you know, directly affected my life. And I think what I really one of the things that I really want everyone to take away from this conversation, and it's not something that's just applicable to sex, it's applicable to any struggle that you're facing in your life, but today we're specifically talking about sex, and that is, we are not going to arrive at a point of perfection before Christ comes. So please don't hold yourself up to unrealistic or unrealistic expectations or standards that are impossible for you to attain to as your human self. One of the things that we have to remember is that each of us are going to struggle in different areas. Narelle, your struggle may not be the same as mine. Charlene, you and I may have the same struggle. Sharon, yours may be different to mine as well. Sharon, the thing that God is working with you on today, he may not have even gotten around to working on in me. Charlene, the thing that takes you one day to get over could take me a year plus to get over. Let's not comparing ourselves with those around us, and let's not buy into this idea that someone who looks as though they have it all together actually has, because the Bible says that we are all sinners. But the wonderful thing is that God has put something in place to be able to protect us, to be able to cover us for those times when, not if, but when we fall. And that is his amazing, amazing grace. Ladies, there are going to be certain things that you will struggle with until the day Christ comes. Maybe that's sex, maybe it's something else, but let's just give ourselves a break, I guess is what I'm saying. Let's not get racked with guilt and shame that we get to a situation where we can't even come to God. I know of people who have been trying to live a lifestyle that they couldn't physically attain to. So what do they choose to do? They choose to walk away completely, abandon their faith because they weren't able to live. And I don't believe that that's what God wants for any of us as his children. I believe that more than anything, God wants to see us in the kingdom. He wants to have that relationship with us so that he can save us. And I believe, as all these ladies have rightly said, it starts with a place of honesty. Am I saying that tomorrow, for those of you who are going to church tomorrow, or those of you who are going to church on Sunday, that you go in and go to the front and be like, hey, you know what I did last night? I'm not saying that you have to do that. But like Charlene said, I think it was Charlene, she was talking about accountability partners. Find people that you can confide in. Find people that you can be real with. Some people that can hold your hand on this journey. Some people that are not ashamed or afraid to take off their mask and show you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and share that with you. Ladies, this is what League of Extraordinary Women is all about. We are all about taking off the mask, about being real, about understanding that we are striving to lead the lives that Christ wants for us. We are striving to lead authentic Christian lives. And that means I'll be the first to hold up my hands and say, you know what? Sometimes I get it completely wrong. Hey, on a daily basis, multiple times a day, there are going to be things that I'm going to mess up on. There's going to be times when I'm not going to be able to live the brand of Christianity that is expected of us. There's going to be days when I will fall short. And you know what? I reserve the right to be human because that's what God made me. And I also reserve the right to claim God's grace daily, hourly, every minute, every second, if I have to. And the beautiful thing is that the same way he's working on Charlene, the same way he's working on Laurel, the same way he's working on Sharon, and the same way he's working on me, he is working on each and every one of you. And there's a song that I heard, and I'm not going to sing, that says that he makes all things beautiful in his time. So ladies, I don't want you to lose hope. I don't want you to be disheartened. Can you stop once you pop? Well, that question is something that you're going to have to wrestle with between you and God. But we are trying to create platforms and situations where you can plug in, where you can connect with women who are striving, who are trying to live this thing, and who are going to be able to hold their hands up and say, you know what? Sometimes I'm going to fall. Sometimes you're going to fall. But God does not love me any less when that actually does happen. So I want to thank each and every one of you, the participants. If you've joined us on Facebook, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the comments. For those of you who have joined us here on Zoom, thank you all for your for your participation also. It's been a great conversation. As I said, we just scratched the surface. We want to go deeper with you, ladies. We want to unpack more topics that pertain to our lives as women. We can't do that always. Listen, I told Laurel, please forgive me. I told Laurel that we're going to be finishing this at 9 o'clock. This is going to be a 1 hour. Ladies, please forgive me. We've gone over like we did last week as well. But I think it's been worthwhile. And the fact that we still got so many ladies on and men on as well, I think it's testament to the fact that this is a conversation that needs to be had. So ladies, and the gents who are here as well, please join us next week, next Friday at 8 p.m. We're going to be having another conversation, and it's called The Demise of the Strong Black Woman. We're going to be looking at mental health. We're going to be looking at some of the ways that we put on this mask, pretending that we're okay when really we're not, and what that is doing to us. So we're going to be talking about that. How often are you on Facebook Live? The answer is for this month, it's been every Friday evening from 8 p.m. After we finish this series, we're going to move into another schedule, but you'll have to be part of League of Extraordinary Women to be able to find out what that's all about. So head over to Instagram. We're at Extraordinary Women UK. Facebook. Those of you who are on Facebook, you already know what our page is. Connect with us. Those of you who received email invitations to tonight's conversation will be able to send something out that should have the link. In fact, the link should already be on there. Or you can also check out our website as well. But all the information can be found on our social media channels. So once again, Charlene, thank you. Laurel, thank you so much. Sharon, thank you so much, especially with your technical difficulties. Thank you for making it on and persisting. It's been great having you all. Ladies, we've got to do this again sometime soon. It's been incredible.
Never give up, even if you pop and you can't stop. Just keep on going, be persistent.
Jump back up. Try again.
That's right. Get up. You can fall 1,000 times, just rise back up. Get back up.
That's right. Ladies, I'm going to wish you all a very good evening. And for the gentlemen as well. Sorry, I keep forgetting our men. Thank you so much for joining us. And catch us again the same time next week, same place. Yeah, it's been wonderful. Have a good night, ladies. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye. Take care.